done, you definitely will leave with a wealth of knowledge. Without much ado, let me introduce the first panelist, Dr. Michael Kpessa Whyte, Senior Lecturer, Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everybody. Let me start by thanking the FES and their organizing partners for the opportunity to share some ideas on this very important topic. Let me also thank every one of you for making time to be here. And I'm doing so in my capacity as a fellow of the Institute of African Studies, the place where we presently are, in which case I'm partially the host also of this program. So you are all very warmly welcome, and you should feel very much at home. The Institute is very friendly and welcoming to vibrant exchange of ideas, as long as there are no exchanges of blows. Let me also acknowledge the presence of the Dean of the Institute of Local Government Studies and my very good friend from Radio Universities, Clement, for being part of the panel. Okay, so I'm told I have 10 minutes, and I don't intend to talk very long. I believe the reason I'm invited is because after the government opted to undertake a referendum in respect of elections for the MMDCs, assembly members, and unit committee members on partisan basis, I also took the initiative, of course, as an academic and a researcher, to publicly share my views on aspects of the government's program. I should say that I am not against competition, and I am also not against political competition. However, I think it is important to always keep in mind that competition is just one of the many mechanisms available in any society for organizing itself by way of deciding on how leaders are chosen, how accountability is induced, and how transparency and other mechanisms of governance are ensured. So beyond competition, you can talk about consensus building, you can talk about collaboration, you can talk about cooperation, and so on and so forth. More often than not, in democracies, we have evoked competition as though that is the only tool available for societies to manage their affairs. Now, with that preamble, I should be able to tell you now that I have been an active voice in the No campaign. And am I happy that the referendum is aborted? Yes, I am happy that it is aborted. What agenda? I would not be able to conjure that, but listening to the defenders of the referendum, that is the campaigners of the yes, three main objectives were ascribed to be the reasons why we needed a referendum to allow us to enable political parties to participate in the district and local level elections. One it was argued that the powers of the president are too extensive, especially with respect to the appointment of MMDCs, and that MMDCs work at the local levels, and that the local people must have a direct say in how they are chosen and how they are held accountable. Two, it was also argued that we need to bring accountability to the local level, and one way of doing that is to allow the people who are at the service of the DCs or the MMDCs to elect them. So the first is to reduce the powers of the president, the second is to bring accountability, and the third, which I heard from some civil society organizations, was to use the involvement of political parties in the local level elections to whip up enthusiasm at the local level for district level elections. I believe that my views on these three have been in the public, but it's important to re-emphasize some of them, given that I have an opportunity now to talk to human beings rather than talking through WhatsApp platforms and then also through websites. Elections are important, but elections have never proven, especially in our history, that they are a panacea to the challenges of accountability and transparency. We have seen several elections in this country at the national level and at all levels, and yet we continue to cry about lack of accountability. We continue to worry about lack of transparency. So for anybody to imagine that by bringing political parties to compete at the district level, you automatically will conjure some accountability or deal with the issues of corruption or deal with the issues of transparency at the local level, that at best remains at the realm of idealism. In reality, it may exacerbate the specific problems we intend to solve. Is it possible to limit the influence of the president by way of appointments at the local level without going through elections? Yes, it is possible. The current situation where we have the president appointing and the president firing with, under some circumstances, district assembly members taking action to also remove DCE as indicated in the provisions, has its own problems. What it has, the problem it has is that for as long as the president continues to appoint, the appointees become beholden to the president. So they look up instead of looking down. Instead of looking down to the people in their jurisdiction by way of providing services in health, education, sanitation, water, housing, and so on and so forth, they are tempted to rather toe party lines because the president appointed them, and they will always have to checkmate their actions against the demeanor and the position of the president so that they are not removed. And so what happens is that you end up having DCEs who are the president's miniature forms in the district assemblies, acting on behalf of the president without necessarily giving the services to the people the way they are expected to be. So clearly, partisan election cannot be a solution to reducing the president's powers. Then the third thing about lack of interest in the local level elections by the citizens or the populations in the various district assemblies, and therefore when we bring partisan election, we will then have citizens getting interested. To my mind, it's a very weak argument. People become interested in state institutions if the state institutions are responsive to their needs. At the local level, people expect district assemblies to make sure that garbage situations are managed properly. They expect that the roads are clean. They expect that property management systems are put in place. They expect that electricity is supplied, water is supplied, schools, hospitals, and all the public services are given great priority. If you do that, the people feel connected to the local government system. And at every given point in time, when there is an opportunity for them to choose the people who run the administration of the local level, they will be very much interested, be it partisan or non-partisan. So this idea that when we bring the parties in, then the parties will become the creeping child that will basically cane everybody and people will get involved, I think it is rather going to exacerbate the already very divisive nature of our politics. So if elections cannot solve the three problems that have been raised by the yes campaigners, what are the implications of electing MMDCs, assembly members, and unity committee members on partisan lines? I think the implications are many, and we cannot go through all of them, but I will mention a few. One of them is that if you bring the political parties into the district assembly elections, the local level, the local people will lose control over the district assemblies. How so? You all know the processes by which we choose our MPs in this country, the primary system, and how party godfathers and party bigwigs in Accra do anything and everything possible to ensure that a candidate of their choice or candidates of their choice are elected using whatever invisible hand that is available to them. The moment you begin to bring partisan election to the local level, you are going to turn the local level mechanisms of choosing leaders into the hands of these party bigwigs, and the local people will completely lose control over that process. We also have to keep in mind that competitive election has its own challenges. One of those challenges is the possibility to keep people divided. And after the division, it's not easy to bring people together. At the local level, in almost every single district in this country, there are multiple ethnic groups. This is the elephant in the room that Ghana hates to talk about. The elephant in the room is that every single district is a multi-ethnic district. And your good and genuine intention to have leaders in these districts elected on partisan lines will be transformed into multi-ethnic competition. And a genuine defeat will be seen as a humiliation of one particular ethnic group. And your guess out of this process, when it repeats itself several times, is as good as mine. So in other words, partisan election could exacerbate what is already a very fragile configuration within our district assemblies. And that can create a number of problems. We also do know that elections come with costs. They are not free. By deciding that we will now begin to run elections for our MMDCs, our assembly members, and our unit committee members on partisan lines, it is either the state is going to shoulder the responsibility of financing that, or the financing of that particular election is going to be taken on by the parties. And the parties raise their monies from ordinary citizens and from businessmen. And you know what the implications of lack of state funding for political parties meant or means for our society. Anybody who finances political parties is not doing it because he's a good Samaritan. Everybody who finances political parties' activity is doing so because he or she conceives of that thing as an investment. Investment whose results will be harvested when that individual or that party wins. And so you will have a situation where when Kofi spots a very nice project, a very nice potential for a project somewhere in a district, picks up a candidate, pushes money in, that candidate wins on the ticket of a particular party as the DCE, and then Kofi comes back and says, okay, payback time. This is where you begin to walk the very rough edges of corruption, misappropriation, lack of due diligence. And you don't want to introduce that to the local level governance system. And you know, one of the things that actually beats my imagination when I hear people say, oh, the parties coming in to the local level election will solve the problem of winner takes all, is something that I don't understand. If we were to introduce political parties into our district level elections, especially with respect to MMDCs, one of the things that is going to happen is simply this. At any given time in this country, you will have a sitting president who will not have control over one or more regions. Because if NDC as a political party happens to control the state at the national level, it is possible that almost all the DCs in Ashanti region will be coming from the MPP. And if the MPP is controlling the state machinery at the national level, it is possible that all the DCs coming from Volta region or T region will be coming from MPP. Two things will happen. Bypass them and look for surrogate appointees to do his work in these particular districts, or these individuals themselves can decide to sabotage the government by way of development in that region. In the end, we wouldn't have served the nation's interest. We would have left a situation where there will always be an orphan region at any given point in time. That exacerbates the problem of winner takes all. Because the winner really has it. The winner at the national level really has it and can deprive those at the local level completely of resources and make them very, very unpopular, hoping that at the next cycle of elections, their popularity will lead the citizens to exert punitive measures against them. Already, and let me just make this point also quickly. My understanding is that those arguing for a yes vote says that when we bring the political parties in, then we would have reduced the influence of the presidency at the local level. Excuse my word, that's it, Bolderdash. Who controls the political parties in this country anyways? Every political party in this country, at any given point in time, the president or the presidential candidate is the most influential and the most powerful person. So if you are saying that we will stop the president from appointing, but we will allow his party to continue to run elections around, the president or the presidential candidate or the leadership of those parties will continue to use that mechanism to control the individuals and control issues at the local levels anyway. So I don't think that the reasons are very sound, and I feel that we have not thought through the process properly. Even with the current regime where presidents are allowed to appoint DCs, they normally appoint from their party or from their following, and that is part of the problem of the winner take all we talk about. Even with that, the news media is replete with multiple cases of abuses at the local level. People's kiosks being closed down, people's houses being demolished, people's rights being trampled upon, and so on and so forth. Even that, with a very remote possibility of getting it into partisanship, that is what is happening. You can imagine what happens when the individuals now derive their mandate directly from the people and feel that the top cannot in any way take them on. I think that is also a grave danger. And my final point on why I think it is dangerous to elect MMDCs on partisan lines is that as a country, we must cut our coats according to our size. Our elections in this country are being financed by the taxpayer of some other country. We talk about Ghana Beyond Aid. We have schools that are still under trees. It is good that we have implemented free SHS to allow as many young people to get into school as possible. But it is bad to see them in places that look like concentration camps. What it means is that we should deploy more resources to making our schools really schools, to making our schools really educational institutions, so that over time we can perfect the delivery of social services. The point I'm making is that if we cry that we don't have money, then the little we have, we must make good use of it. And that is by way of saying, rather than focusing on partisan competition, we must begin to think, are there other means by which we can actually make the DCEs accountable, reduce the powers of the president, and equally make the people very active in the local level governance. And that leads me to the question of what next? What next? It's simple. There are many schools of thought. There are those who say, okay, now that the referendum has been cancelled, we should keep what is there. I argue that no. I think that the current system is not working well. It may sound like a contradiction, that I'm against the referendum, but I also think that what is there now is not working well. I am up for a very good solution, not just any solution at all. And what do I mean by that? So there are those who argue that, and that includes quite a number of people I have listened to, that, well, let's get the parties out of the thing and just allow the citizens to elect people on the basis of who they are. I think that reasoning is quite sound, but I have a problem with it. But I'll tell you why it is sound first. If we are to elect MMDCs, assembly members, and unit committee members on non-partisan basis, that would have been good. Why? Because there are many people, perhaps including some among you, who don't want to be tagged with any political party. There are many people who are working as teachers, doctors, lawyers, engineers, and so on and so forth, who hope that when they retire, they will go back to their communities, be an assemblyman, or hope to be elected as a DCE or MMDCE, so that they can serve in the capacity as a citizen who has been given the opportunity by their people, having served and acquired several years of experience, without doing so on partisan lines. The moment we say we should do this on partisan lines, we are much more likely to close that door to those people. Of course, people can run independent, but how many independents have been successful in this country? And so it is extremely important that we think beyond competition and begin to look out for a solution that actually marries competition, consensus, and collaboration in a manner more nuanced and sophisticated, but delivers the results and meets the objectives for which we have actually engaged in this conversation. So what next? I think that the debate is going to continue, but my proposal is simple. We should consider the possibility of allowing assembly members to be elected the way they are elected currently. That is one. Assembly members, and I want to be specific, assembly members to be elected the way they are elected presently. We should also continue to allow unit committee members to be elected the way they are elected presently. You know why? If it's not broken, why fix it? Those two arenas of election have not proven to be problematic. They have been perfect. I have seen several communities where people know that Kwame, who is contesting, is an NDC man. But when Kwame is an assemblyman, they don't see him as an NDC assemblyman. They see Kwame as an assemblyman and they go to discuss their issues with him. But once Kwame goes on a political party platform, even when Kwame calls for communal labor, it is the NDC people, their communal labor, me, I'm not going to go. Then the person who contested against Kwame is also waiting. He will also call his communal labor at the next possible opportunity. That is going to render our communities very divisive. So leave the assembly members to be elected the way we currently have. Leave the unit committee members to also be elected the way we currently have. What about the MMDCs? I propose that we develop a framework for what I call the electoral college at the local level. If you are an MMDC, you work with a large number of people within the district setting. Within this district, there are schools, there are hospitals, there are churches, there are markets, there are all kinds of establishments that relate to you in one way or the other. So, what do I mean by electoral college? The MMDCs, we could develop an electoral college that comprises of 1, the assembly members themselves, 2, the heads of various state institutions like the head of the GES at the local level, at the district level, the head of Ghana Health Service at the local level, the head of Audit Service at the local level, the head of almost all the various agencies at the district level. Then you also have to give a certain room for a number of chiefs to be part of the electoral college. Then you have to give room to a certain number of religious leaders, both Muslim, Christian, and so on and so forth, to be part of the electoral college. Then you have to give a certain room, a certain quota to a number of women to be part of the electoral college. and then you give a certain quota to a number of young people to be part of the electoral college, an expansive electoral college. At this point, you have two options. One option is that whenever it's time for MMDCs, individuals could file their nominations, meet this particular electoral college, convince them, and get elected. Matter closed. The other option is, maybe if we do that, we will make the local governance system too local. So we need to connect it somehow to the top. So the other option you have is to say, okay, at any given time, when the president wins an election, he wins the popular mandate of the people. So let's grant him the opportunity, or her the opportunity, to nominate 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, whatever number we want, and let those individuals go and face the electoral college, so that the electoral college then decides who will be best for the district. I think that we are currently suffering from poverty of ideas. And we need to actually stretch the margins of our thinking beyond the limits of the debates we are having now. And look out for that which works best for us. The temptation to copy America, Canada, US, Britain, Scandinavian countries or whatever is great because they have gone before us. But we must always keep in mind that the evolution and development of our states and the very structural foundation of our states is fundamentally different from many of the countries we seek to copy. So I continue to say that, well, I was for no. No has won. What is the way forward? We must engage a lot more and come out with the best solution. I have put my proposal on the floor. I don't, by the stretch of any imagination, intend to say that that is the best and final. I believe that it is an idea that needs to meet with other ideas, and in the process of that coalition, we will develop a certain amount of convergence, and that in itself will probably produce the best possible way for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.